You have already mentioned some of the units that have shown themselves to be the best. I have been hearing about them almost every day recently, morning and evening. And you have listed some. I would like to name the ones that have caught my attention. These are the 76th Guards Air Assault Division, the 106th Guards Air Assault Division, the 11th Separate Guards Air Assault Brigade and the 83rd Guards Air Assault Brigade, the 56th Guards Air Assault Regiment of the 7th Air Assault Division, the 155th Guards Separate Naval Infantry Brigade of the Pacific Fleet, the 810th Guards Naval Infantry Brigade of the Black Sea Fleet, the 177th Guards Separate Naval Infantry Regiment of the Caspian Flotilla, the 34th Guards Motor Rifle Brigade, which has been particularly active recently, perhaps in the last week, the 22nd Motor Rifle Regiment of the 72nd Motor Rifle Division, the 1220th Motor Rifle Regiment of the 3rd Motor Rifle Division, and the Akhmat Special Forces, which have already been mentioned here, the particularly brave and effective Veterans Volunteer Formation, and all those who have acted with them. I would also like to thank the leadership of the General Staff's Main Operations Directorate for the work they have done. In fact, our task in the near future, as soon as possible, is to completely defeat the enemy, who is entrenched and still fighting on the territory of the Kursk region, to completely liberate the territory of the Kursk region and restore the situation on the state border. And, of course, I ask you to consider the creation of a security zone along the state border in the future. I would also like to draw attention to this. All those who are on the territory of the Kursk region, who are committing crimes against the civilian population here, who are opposing our armed forces, law enforcement agencies and special services, are terrorists according to the laws of the Russian Federation. This is how their actions are qualified by the General Prosecutor's Office of the Russian Federation, and it is under these articles of terrorism that the Investigative Committee of the Russian Federation has initiated criminal proceedings against them. Now Valery Gerasimov has just mentioned the prisoners of war. But these people, of course, must be treated first and foremost as terrorists, in accordance with the laws of the Russian Federation. We treat all people humanely, and we must treat all those who find themselves in our hands in the future. At the same time, I would like to remind you that foreign mercenaries are not covered by the 1949 Geneva Convention on the Treatment of Prisoners of War. And, of course, I ask you to pass on words of thanks to all personnel for what has been done recently. I very much expect that all combat tasks of our units will certainly be fulfilled and the territory of the Kursk region will soon be completely liberated from the enemy. Supreme Commander-in-Chief, the units of the Seva Group of Forces continue their operation to destroy the enemy in the Kursk region. In total, in the course of offensive actions, more than 1,100 square kilometers of territory have been liberated, which accounts for over 86% of the area previously occupied by the enemy. Over the time of military operations in the Kursk direction, the enemy lost more than 67,000 servicemen. These are the most trained and highly motivated units of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, AFU, as well as a foreign mercenary unit. In total, about 7,000 military vehicles have been destroyed over this time, including 391 tanks, 2,780 armored combat vehicles, over 1,000 artillery weapons and mortars. During the autumn-winter campaign, the AFU command centered its main strength on the Kursk area. The numbers confirm it. Thus, the relatively small AFU Kursk staging point accounts for about 19% of personnel losses across the entire area of special military operation and more than 40% of equipment losses. Counting the total for 6 months, the direction accounts for 19% in personnel and 40% in equipment losses. The Kiev regime aimed at setting up a so-called strategic staging point in the Kursk region to use it as a bargaining chip in potential negotiations with Russia. In addition, the Ukrainian leadership attempted to use the Kursk region's foray to halt the advance of our troops and draw them away from Donbass. These enemy plans completely failed. The results were achieved because of the courageous, selfless and well-coordinated actions of the troops and volunteer units of the Seva Group of Forces, as well as the effective use of Air and Space Forces Aviation and the Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Unit. The advance along the state border by the 76th and 106th Airborne Divisions, the 83rd Airborne Assault Brigade, and the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade, along with the successful actions of the Rubicon Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Unit in the Kursk region and in the Ukraine's Sumy region this February, allowed to take the remaining AFU logistical routes under dense fire control, deprive the enemy of the possibility to deploy its reserves, ammunition and material and create the conditions for its complete defeat. The offensive actions of the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade in the Nikolskoye direction tightened the assault on a large enemy force north of Malaya Lochnia village. Afterwards, the 34th Motorized Rifle Brigade, the 22nd Motorized Rifle Regiment, units of the 9th Motorized Rifle Regiment and other forces liberated Malaya Lochnia village and the neighboring settlements. The enemy suffered heavy losses, and several small groups began to retreat south, losing personnel along the way, in the face of our artillery fire and drone attacks. I would like to particularly highlight the heroic actions of the Joint Assault Unit of the Veterans Volunteer Detached Force as well as the 11th Airborne Assault Brigade, the 30th Motorized Rifle Regiment, and the Akhmat Special Forces Unit. Over 600 members of this joint force went about 15 kilometers inside a gas pipeline and reached the AFU rear lines. These actions were unexpected for the enemy and contributed to the slowdown of its defense and the development of our advance in the Kursk region. As a result, over the past 5 days alone, 24 settlements and 259 square kilometers of Kursk region have been liberated by the actions of the Kursk troops in all directions. The invasion area has been reduced by more than 2.5 times. At present, the operation to destroy the enemy on the Kursk territory continues. The AFU group has been isolated and its systematic destruction is underway. In certain directions, Russian units have crossed the state border and entered the Sumy region, where they continue to destroy the enemy's reserves and to expand the security zone. Ukrainian servicemen, seeing the futility of further resistance, have actively begun to surrender. 430 servicemen have been captured. Supreme Commander-in-Chief, the Russian armed forces continue to defeat the AFU units in the Kursk region with the objective of completing the liberation of the region to reach the Russian state border as soon as possible. End of report.